Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Mick Beale to my Tony Mowbray. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
We are the #1 championship podcast, the Second Tier, and thank you for joining us wherever you are. This is an emergency pod, ladies and gentlemen, because Mick Beale has left Sunderland. Mick Beale, we hardly knew you. It was the worst of times. It was the shittest of times. I mean, Justin, where were you when you heard this news? Whereabouts? What were you doing when this news started seeping through?
I was on a train on the way back from Manchester. Stood up all the way, actually. Fun fact, it's a complete digression. Martin Lewis complained about the same train I was on because everyone was stood up in it. So I was on the same train as Martin Lewis, the financial guy from ITV. If anyone is unaware of who Martin Lewis is, so yeah, I was on a train on the way back from sunny Manchester.
Lovely. I was giving blood at the time that it broke through, and I tell you what, when I found out about the news, suddenly my bag just filled up like nothing because it got the blood pumping. Is what I'm trying to say.
Which bag?
What do you mean?
Nothing. Carry on.
Oh, okay, fine. You're being very crude. Anyway, We're here to talk about Mick Beale leaving Sunderland, ladies and gentlemen, and we've got a statement here from Sunderland. It's from the sporting director, Christian Speakman. He said, "We are disappointed that Michael is leaving Sunderland. Our desire is to improve, and unfortunately, there hasn't been evidence. As such, we take full accountability and feel that acting decisively is in the best interests of the club. This has been a difficult few months for Michael, who leaves with our best wishes for the future." It's not completely clear whether Sunderland have sacked Beale, whether he's walked, whether it's a mutual thing. I suppose if they're acting decisively, that probably means it is a sacking. And if that is the case, it's pretty good going to be sacked twice within 6 months, isn't it?
Twice within 6 months, just over a year after you acrimoniously left another championship club who were top of the table and your career was going in somewhat of a positive direction.
Yeah.
Well done, Mickey Beale.
Oh,
You've
Mick.
Cocked your own career up quickly.
Yeah, we'll get onto that. We'll get onto that a bit later on, Justin.
Yeah.
But looking at his spell at Sunderland, this was doomed from the start, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, he's had so many politics to deal with. Not only was the list of candidates ahead of him were probably more exciting and more of a positive name to put to the frame of the role at the Stadium of Light. But also his spells so far haven't exactly been exciting. I know QPR, he left them when they were top of the Championship, but only 15 games into the season, only a quarter of the way through the season, things could have quickly fallen apart, as they did at QPR. That could have happened under Mick Beale, and those runner losses that they felt last season happened under Mick Beale. That start happened under Mick Beale, before he hopscotched to Rangers, and then his spell at Rangers wasn't great. He did his very best to become the third best team in the SPL, and he was comfortably behind Celtic, who lost Ange Postecoglou this summer. So look, he just wasn't right for the role. I think he was an inexperienced coach trying to guide an inexperienced team that lacked leaders, and ultimately he's not a leader himself. He's not even coached over 100 games yet, so why he's getting jobs like Sunderland at this stage in his career without any justification other than him having good coaching credentials doesn't make any sense. But that's by the by. It was a bad appointment, bad appointment.
Yeah, well, the reason I say it was doomed from the start was sacking a popular manager like Tony Mowbray was always risky, especially when he wasn't actually doing terribly at the time he was dismissed. And it always seems to me like Sunderland did it because they thought they could do better. So if you're going to do that, you've got to bring in someone else who is, without a doubt, an upgrade on someone like Mowbray. Of course, Will Still was heavily linked with the job. You may remember, one of the most highly rated young coaches in Europe. And I feel like that did Mick Beale absolutely no favours at all, because that has just heightened expectations even further from the perspective of the Sunderland fan base. So when it's revealed that the manager they're actually bringing in is someone who failed at Rangers and left in questionable circumstances at QPR, it was always an uphill battle. And fans have strongly voiced their displeasure from day one, like nothing I've ever seen before. I can't think of too many managers who have been so outrightly disliked by supporters from the moment they've came in like Mick Beale has. And the only way this was going to work out was if he won around fans by winning games, and he just hasn't. It's always going to be difficult for Sunderland to accomplish what they want to do this season when the supporters head into each game completely uninspired by the manager, and they're ready to turn as soon as things go wrong. Now, that sounds like I'm blaming the supporters, but I'm not. I'm blaming the hierarchy for thinking this was an acceptable appointment in the circumstances, because it never was.
No, you're absolutely spot on. And again, I go back to that aspect of needing to guide a club with a young squad that has so much high promise. And you've got Tony Mowbray there, who was in charge before Mick Beale, and he was an incredible leader. He was a good leader. He was a good people person. I don't think they're credentials that Mick Beale's got just yet. And I think that the route he's taken in his management career has pulled him away from that. Any development that he needed to do at QPR, he couldn't do because he left too soon. So yeah, and I think as well as that, he's not handled himself well at all in the media. There's been a lot of sort of back and forth, and it's not been ideal. And then there's a lot of the Trey Hume thing as well. And now Mick Beale's in a position where he's only 2 stints in the Championship have lasted less than a quarter of a season, which is a disaster for him. And I think as Sunderland, that as the hierarchy of Sunderland, you've got to look at that and go, yeah. I mean, what is the justification of going from Tony Mowbray, an accomplished Championship manager, to Mick Beale, who is not any of those boxes that Mowbray ticks? It doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense, and that's why he's lasted less than 8 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to say that results and performances haven't been abysmal. People may look at this as neutrals or someone who doesn't necessarily pay attention to the Championship and think, God, it must have been absolutely awful. But on the pitch, it wasn't abhorrently bad, because what we've seen in the space of 2 months hasn't been so bad that they simply had to have made a change. I mean, you look at similar examples like Kolo Touré last year at Wigan. Yeah. That was an absolute omni-shambles, which he just had to go. Whereas Mick Beale wasn't that. It's more about the fans just not liking this guy, and that having an impact on the club's progress, which was going really well up until the point that Mick Beale came in. He also hasn't helped himself with things like claiming Sunderland fans didn't like him because he's Southern, and of course the now infamous cold shoulder to Trey Hume at the weekend. But all of this has just combined into one big melting pot of a calamitous appointment, and I think it's caused a bit of a trust issue between the Sunderland supporters and the hierarchy now, because I think everyone before looks like the club is in the right hands and going in the right direction. Now there's question marks which are being pointed at the hierarchy about whether this is the right thing to do, particularly Christian Speakman, who I'm seeing a lot of people saying he needs to go, as well as Mick Beale. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. So it's Mike Dodds who's taking over at Sunderland until the end of the season. He was in caretaker charge not long ago, during that brief period between Tony Mowbray getting sacked and Mick Beale coming in. Do you think it's the right move, Justin, or should they be looking to get in a permanent manager?
Yeah, it's hard to foresee Sunderland putting together a run of form now that is going to put them into bona fide playoff contention, because I think they're behind the other sides in and around them, and I think that's down to a lot of the decision making at the top as well as Mick Beale. And as I say, I don't think Mick Beale's blameless in this omni-shambles of a situation that we've found ourselves in with Sunderland. I think for context, for supporters, their recruitment strategy at Sunderland is one that is focusing on young players, and as I say, you lose a lot of leaders in that dressing room and a bit of experience, and who's the leader in the dressing room? There isn't any. You can't really call on a veteran to manage the dressing room, and you're sort of over relying on a head coach who has experience in being a good leader. Sunderland just didn't have that under Mick Beale, and I think that's a key thing to bring in context for that. So I think in terms of where they go with their next coach, I think Mike Dodds is probably the best solution, because he's got a good relationship with the players. We know that we've heard of that because of his caretaker spell and how glowingly referenced he was by certain individuals within the squad. And in addition to that, I think it gives time for Sunderland to really reflect on their process of recruitment, as well as finding another manager who's going to be fit for the squad. Because I think recruitment's a big thing for Sunderland. It's been okay, it's been decent, but they need to lighten up a bit and maybe go out and sign a 30-year-old or two, because the squad needs it. The squad needs it, and that will be a go-to for their manager as well, because they've got experienced heads in the dressing room.
So do you think Mike Dodds for the rest of the season, or would you think a permanent manager?
No, I said Mike Dodds is the right choice for because as I say, it gives Sunderland time to assess the situation rather than jumping straight into it. Because I think going out and getting a Will Still, for example, they might find themselves in a similar problem to what they had with Mick Beale.
Well, he did a very good job in the short time he was there in December, didn't he, Dodds? And so much so that I said I reckon he'll end up being a good manager eventually. Well, looks like we're about to find out a lot sooner than I thought. I mean, he's a young coach, just 37, highly rated. He is credited with having a big influence on the development of the Bellinghams, Damari Gray, Nathan Redmond when he was at Birmingham prior to moving to Sunderland. Joe Bellingham has been speaking glowingly about him when he was last in charge back in December. So he seems to be really popular with him and all the other players in the squad as well. So it's a great opportunity for him. May even be an audition for him getting the job full time. So we'll see how he does. With regards to what happens next after Dodds, because it does look like, unless Dodds has an absolute nightmare, that it will be him until the end of the season. I don't know. Am I right in saying Will Still's out of contract in the summer? I thought that was the case, but I may be talking absolute nonsense there. But maybe they'll revisit that, or get in someone else from the continent. I don't know. I think that's probably more likely, isn't it, Justin?
Well, that's the thing. The Mick Beale situation is such an aspect where they need to learn from it, isn't it? They really have cocked up in terms of where they went from Tony Mowbray, because there were better candidates named. I think we all read the profiles on some of the exciting names that were linked. And that they might not be in contention now, but what Sunderland do give themselves is a bit of breathing space, a bit of time, because I think Mike Dodds is more than capable of guiding the team. And if he does a good job and has a good interview process, shall we say, between now and the end of the season, then he might get the job as well. So, and that's something that Sunderland give themselves the opportunity to do. But I say, looking at the playoffs now, I just don't think they can get into that top six. And I think with giving themselves that breathing space, they give themselves the best chance next season. That being said, the picture could change completely in terms of trying to recruit a new manager, because, for example, Jack Clark could leave. He's been linked heavily with other clubs. Is a manager going to come in and is he going to want to sell his best player already? I don't know. That could put them off as well. So there are a lot of variables now working against Sunderland in terms of getting that next manager.
Big club though, Justin. Big club, isn't it?
It is a big club.
Well, whether they sell Jack Clark or not, they may just be forced to do that because he's obviously such a very good player. And I don't think that will necessarily put off people from coming in. I think that's just nonsense, really. With regards to them and whether their playoff chances are over now, I don't think that's completely fair either. I mean, Dodds was doing brilliantly in the short time that he was in charge before. So, I mean, we've seen it before. Caretaker bosses coming in, everything changes. See a big upturn in form. That may very well happen here. So maybe Dodds might be the same. And as we say, he's such a highly rated coach, very popular with the players. So I don't think you can completely rule that out. But looking back at this whole episode, Justin, what can we take away from this all? Well, I think it goes to show that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. That goes for Sunderland and Mick Beale. Of course, Sunderland got rid of a very popular manager in Tony Mowbray, tried to do better, and it all went very wrong. And Mick Beale, just under a year and a half ago, was a very highly rated coach, earning plaudits for the job he was doing at QPR. He threw it all away, and now he's been sacked twice in a matter of months. So the question is, Justin, what next for Mick Beale?
Oh, he's Ian Foster was the assistant to Stephen Gerrard at Al Ettifaq, wasn't he, in Saudi? So there could be a job opening as Stephen Gerrard's assistant once again. I think Mick Beale needs to go back into that, because looking at what he's done over the past sort of 12 to 18 months, there's a lack of trust there from my perspective. If he was manager of my football club, made manager of my football club, I'm looking at that and going, well, he's going to jump ship as soon as times go good. And then at the same time, as soon as times go bad, he's not at any point in his career, his short career so far, convinced me that he's capable of turning bad form around and bad performances around. So, yeah, for me, he's probably just better off being a head coach. He's still young and he's got that on his side to sort of revitalise himself, and that he might come back at some point. But like I said earlier, both his spells in the Championship have lasted less than a quarter of a season. That's 2 spells. He's been sacked twice in a matter of months. It's not good on your CV.
I will disagree to an extent, Justin.
Wow.
I don't think... Well, I think you're being very harsh. I don't think Mick Beale is a bad manager. Why are you pulling that face?
Because what is... there's no justification to say he's an okay manager because
he did really well at QPR before jumping ship.
15 games. That's not enough time to properly judge a manager.
Well, it's not a big enough sample size for you to say he's not a good manager.
Exactly, but he left to go to Rangers where we've got a bigger sample size, where he was sacked because Rangers weren't very good, and then he's been sacked again in a matter of weeks because Sunderland haven't been very good, and his relationship with supporters is broken down, and it looks like his relationship with players is broken down.
But as we've been saying, Justin, it's more about how the fans took to the appointment as opposed to everything being crap on the pitch.
Yeah, I do sort of disagree with that because again, you're looking at it from a playing perspective. Blanking a player coming off the pitch, which you said you were sceptical about whether or not you saw him or not, just at the weekend, by the way. So, I think
what's that got to do with performances?
Because if you've lost a dressing room, you're not going to get good performances out of the players.
How do you know he's lost the dressing room?
I'm merely speculating, but it's not a good look for a player, if you're a young player, to come off the pitch and he's been completely blanked. And I think that's a big thing. And he clearly lost the dressing room at Rangers in terms of not getting any performances out of them to the point where he was sacked. They were out of Europe, etc. There are a lot of things that are working against Mick Beale rather than working for. So it's quite difficult to say he's a good manager or an okay manager at this point.
Yeah, but you're outright saying he's a bad manager.
Because there's a big sample size to suggest he is.
Is there?
Yes. I don't think there's an argument against this.
I completely disagree with that. I think that's just nonsense. I don't think he's a bad manager. I mean, his reputation has taken a bit of a battering in the last 12 months, but for me, he's definitely not a bad manager. I think this was just the wrong move by Sunderland, and he's been made the scapegoat out of the whole thing. I think a bigger question is he the kind of bloke you'd want in charge of your club? This is the kind of bloke who will say in one interview that he can't be the first to jump ship before doing exactly that a matter of weeks later. The kind of manager who complains about fans not respecting him instead of just getting on with the job. And he's also the kind of manager who, in my opinion, ignores players as they get substituted off and then lies about it not long after the game. So, I mean, is that the kind of manager you want in charge of your club? That's up for championship owners to decide, but I wouldn't want someone like that as the figurehead of my club. But if you ignore all that, I think he is a good championship manager. He is still only 43, so there's every chance he ends up having a great managerial career one way or another. But he has to learn to keep his mouth shut, because he doesn't do himself any favours with several high-profile clangers with things coming out of his mouth, and he's only been a manager in first team football for a year and a half, just over that. So it's not a great record for him speaking in the press, that is it?
No, it's not. But I mean, the point I've been making about him not being a great manager encompasses his personality as well, which is clearly quite volatile. You have to have a level-headed manager. Look at Tony Mowbray as an example in a comparison. Likeable guy, gets fans on board, clearly gets the relationship going within the club as well. I just don't think Mick Beale ticks any of those boxes. And as I say, you can be a good coach on a technical level. I don't doubt that. I think he probably is a very good coach, a very talented coach, a world-class coach to some extent as well. But you have to have the personality to match it, and he clearly doesn't. You can't just throw a manager in because he gets good results. He's got to get on with the players, get on with the fans as well. It's a big job being a manager, not just about managing on the pitch. You've got to manage outside of the pitch as well. And he's failed miserably in every single one of his jobs.
Not every single one, Justin. QPR.
Every single one of his jobs.
He didn't fail there, did he? He just walked out when he had the chance.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That's
it
not
encompasses
failing,
his personality. It encompasses his personality, which he failed. It's a failure on his part.
No, it's not.
Because again, it's a mark against his. It is. It's a mark against his reputation. You cannot defend it.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're talking. I can't disagree with you more there, because you don't seem to be talking any sense. But anyway, we'll leave that there, Justin. But just before we go, we have got to sign off by sending our best wishes to Tony Mowbray, a man who has been mentioned plenty of times in this episode for no fault of his own, but he is temporarily stepping down as Birmingham boss as he undergoes medical treatment for an unnamed illness. Mowbray said he was told he requires treatment after undergoing a recent health assessment. Birmingham say he'll be away for between 6 to 8 weeks and he'll be given all the support he needs. His assistant Mark Venus will be filling in and Mobes will still be giving advice while he's away. Shocking news because we were just giving him loads of praise at the weekend for the job he was doing at Birmingham. Of course, his health is much more important than how Birmingham City are getting on. So we wish him all the best and hopefully we see him in the dugout again in the not too distant future when he's fit and healthy. Hopefully, while he's, relaxing on the sidelines for a few weeks, Justin, he'll get plenty of revels for him to, dip into.
Yeah, everyone find out where he... Actually, don't find out where he is and don't inundate him with bags of revels.
Why'd you have to make
send
it
your
weird?
well wishes. Just send your well wishes and then throw the bags of revels when it's his first game back.
No, don't do that. We shouldn't be encouraging that either. You're digging a hole here. Anyway, let's stop that before Justin causes any more trouble. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. This has been an emergency pod reacting to the news of Mick Beale leaving Sunderland. Still don't know if he's been sacked or whether it's a mutual thing, but he's left, and that's all that we know. Mike Dodds, until the end of the season, best of luck to you, Doddsy. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.